What should you do if you're a government minister and you're asked a question you don't want to answer? Well, often a politician will try and subtly change the subject in a bid to run down the clock. But Energy Minister Andrew Bowie has taken a different tack. He simply asked the host to change their questions.
The standing charge has risen for gas and electricity. Can you explain to people why that is the right way to go, if you believe it so?
Well, I mean, that's obviously a matter for Ofgem. I think what we should be focusing on right now...
Because you're the government in charge. What do you think about the standing charge rising?
Look, I think the focus today should be on the fact that the price of energy is falling, that people's average energy bills are coming down.
But my job is to ask questions. My job is to ask questions on behalf of our viewers and to try to elicit an answer. And I know many people are confused and upset about the standing charge as it is, paying for energy when some people just simply turn the meters off. They turn the supply off because they can't afford to pay. Yet they have to pay this fixed charge for infrastructure. The standing charges for gas and electricity have gone up. So I would like to ask you, on behalf of those viewers who are struggling, whether or not you think it is right that these standing charges have risen.
Look, I think what we need to focus on today is the fact that people's average energy bills are coming down. People will be paying less now than they have been for their energy bills overall. That's an incredibly positive thing. The standing charge, as it is a matter for Ofgem. It's something that the government will be discussing. And indeed, the future of energy markets in the United Kingdom is something that we are reviewing. There's a call for evidence ongoing right now. But today is a positive day. The price cap has come down. And I think that's what we should be focusing on. People paying less for their energy bill than they have been for quite a considerable period of time.
Which will be offset by the rising the standing charge.
No, it won't be offset by the rising the standing charge. Yes, it will,
because the standing charge is going up.
No, Naga, energy bills were coming down on average by about £580 from its peak. That is in no way going to be offset by this very slight rise in the standing charge.
So as you'll see, for some people, it will be offset by that standing charge. First, though, I mean, what was that? This is a positive news day. You should ask me questions about the positive stories, please. Don't ask me the negative ones. You don't actually get to make those rules if you're a politician. Now, to be honest, I'm very suspicious of the close relationships between the mainstream media and top politicians. So I'm sure sometimes, there's a nudge, wink, wink agreement, which is to say, if you don't ask me nice enough questions, I'm not going to come back on your show. But you don't normally see it done live on air. This is a positive news day. Ask me a question about positive news. Very, very transparent. I don't think it worked. I don't think it persuaded many people. Let's, though, take a look at the issue at hand. What is the change that they were discussing? This is the write-up from the BBC. An annual energy bill for a household using a typical amount of gas and electricity will fall to £1,923 in October under regulator Ofgem's new price cap. Bills will be £151 lower than current rates and £577 down on last winter. But many people will see little difference in what they pay despite the fall because some government support has been withdrawn. As well as the withdrawn government support, households are also going to be hit by an increase in the gas and electricity standing charge. That's the flat fee all users pay to maintain national infrastructure. And because it's a flat fee, it means people who are tight for cash can't limit their energy use to bring it down. Of course, if you're struggling to pay your energy bill, you could use less energy. When it comes to this flat charge, this standing fee, you have to pay it however much gas or electricity you use. And the result, according to the Resolution Foundation, is this. Any family with an energy consumption less than 4/5 of the average will see higher bills this winter than last, a situation that applies to around 1 in 3 or 35% of households in England and close to half or 47% of those in the lowest income decile. For some, these extra costs will be substantial. 13% of households, that's 2.7 million families, face energy bills rising by more than £100 this winter, a figure that rises to 1 in 4, 24% for the poorest households. So this is a pretty, this is not a good situation, right? You've got 47% of those in the lowest income decile are going to be paying more this winter than they paid last winter. That probably means that 53% are going to be paying less, unless there's a number of people who are paying exactly the same amount. But this isn't exactly fantastic news for lots of people in the country. Yet this is the situation which Andrew Bowie called a positive day. And that's something he was called out on. This was an interview he did with Good Morning Britain.
Andrew Bowie, are you seriously suggesting to our viewers this morning who have been texting us in their droves that they are worried about the winter? This news this morning doesn't reassure them. Their standing charges are going to go high. The bills are still high. Are you seriously telling them it's a positive day?
It's a positive day in that energy bills are
but
coming
they're telling
down,
you it's
down
not.
from £580 at its peak. And as I said, half of everybody's energy bills in this country, half of everybody's bill in this country was paid by the government last year.
But that was
cost us
last year. What about this
As
year?
I said, that was £40 billion well spent. And the most vulnerable in this country, across society, will always be supported as they are right now.
Mr. Bowie, it just seems that I'm saying in this polite way, that you've got deaf ears here. People, I can read you all the messages. People, people who vote for you, people who put you in government, are saying you're not right on this, I'm afraid. You're calling it a positive day. They are messaging us, we're not making this up, saying they're still going to struggle. They're asking for help. Your response to them is, it's a positive day.
Energy prices are moving in the right direction. Inflation is coming down. The economy is getting under control.
Inflation is coming down. The economy is under control. You might personally feel poorer than ever. You might be in a miserable situation, but the aggregate statistics say that we are meeting our target, so get off my back. Mike, will the minister be persuading many viewers at home there?
Absolutely not. I think, the Tories will be absolutely raging with him based on those media performances, because they were really, really poor media appearances, both of them. Like the second one where he's trying to convincingly say things are fine. It's like the meme of the guy in the building which is burning, and he's saying this is fine. It's just so unconvincing. I just think that, the government aren't doing enough to support, families, especially low-income families, during this kind of energy bill crisis. They're also not setting us up for the future when it comes to transitioning to clean energy. So, the Tories can't convince us they're in control of things, because they simply aren't in control of things. Even in terms of addressing the loopholes in their windfall tax, we aren't doing those things. So the Tories aren't in control here. I think families up and down the country, are under severe pressure when it comes to bills. And this winter, unfortunately, is going to be tough for so many. And I think I read somewhere that, 6.3 million people in this country could be in fuel poverty. That's not a sign that things are good and this is a positive news story. That's a sign that, millions of people across this country are going to be struggling this winter. So no matter how the Conservatives try to spin this is not a good news day. That wasn't a good news day. And, we need more from the Conservative government when it comes to supporting low-income families, when it comes to, helping those who are struggling. We need more from them. And I think lots of it's just that those media appearances, summarize the disdain that some of the Conservatives have for, struggling families. Things are better, just go away and leave us alone. We're going to tell you how things are, and your experiences, what you're going through doesn't matter. The disdain showed to the interviewer on BBC, that just shows you these politicians ultimately don't have the compassion when it comes to understanding what people are going through in this country, and finding the, most effective ways of addressing those issues. I think that's a real problem, because we have politicians in positions of power because we hope they can address the issues that affect us in this country, but that's clearly not the case with the Conservative government, and hasn't been the case for the last 13 years.
Yeah, I mean, I do think those interviews did sort of demonstrate like a real lack of compassion, especially sort of this constantly saying, no, this is a good news story because aggregate bills are going down. Now, it might be true that aggregate bills are going down, not by much, by the way. They're still higher than they were before the Ukraine war, before sort of the inflation we saw after COVID. They're still historically fairly high, but they are going to be slightly lower than they were last year. But you can't just keep talking about the aggregate if you've got a significant minority of people, and especially the more vulnerable in society, who are going to be screwed over by this. So if you're being told, no, there are a significant number of people who are going to have higher bills this winter than they did last winter, and we all know that last winter was difficult enough. If your answer is, well, on aggregate, they're falling. No, these are real people, right? These are real people. It's not just one or two people. This is a significant minority of people who are disproportionately poor, who are going to have higher bills this winter than last winter because of the change to the standing charge. Now, what the minister was sort of saying elsewhere in the interview, that this is down to Ofgem, it's nothing to do with the government. But I mean, I think they probably can lean on Ofgem. They obviously can come up with some kind of support as well. So the idea that you just sort of say, oh, well, on the aggregate is fine. I mean, it's similar with inflation, right? Rishi Sunak seems to be really annoyed that people aren't going out in the street and clapping him because inflation's come down from 10 to 6%, still quite high. And those prices are still going to remain high, right? It's not as if when inflation goes down, the prices come down. No, they just increase at a a lower pace than they were before. And until our wages, the British people's wages catch up with that inflation, then we're all still poorer than we were before. So the idea that you can say, no, why aren't you praising me? Why aren't you thanking me for getting inflation down? Well, the reason people aren't thanking you is because they're still poorer than when you became prime minister, right? So you're not going to get thanks. I'm sorry. And before you say, oh, well, he arrived into a difficult situation. What was he supposed to do? Well, he also backed the Conservatives for the 13 years previously when there wasn't an external war which forced them to make Britain poorer. They did that entirely of their own volition. It was a complete act of self-harm, austerity, right? Now, obviously, the government are dealing with a difficult situation. They've made some dodgy decisions to try and take us through it, but there is an external pressure. We have to admit that. They didn't start the war in Ukraine, but they did start austerity, and that has put us in terrible stead for when this external shock came along. And no one is thanking Rishi Sunak for good reason. Oh, the aggregate data is actually suggesting it's getting better. But it doesn't feel like it's getting better. And that's actually because the aggregate data, which really matters, which is living standards, is going down, right? Living standards have fallen. If inflation is down, but living standards are falling, it doesn't really matter if you've brought inflation down from 10 to 6%. What matters is the money in people's pockets and what it buys them. So if inflation at 10% would be fine if wages also went up by 10%. Inflation going down to 6% is no good if wages are going up 5%, right? Doesn't make any sense. And I think people are looking at the Conservatives now and just thinking they are so out of touch. They have nothing to do with my life. And that was demonstrated in those interviews, I think, so clearly. One of the set of interviews I've seen recently, which most clearly demonstrates how out of touch the Conservative Party are, and why I do think, whatever we think of Keir Starmer, he's probably going to win the next election.